In Grandma's Attic by Arleta Richardson, illustrated by Dora Letter. Chapter 10. The Pearl Buttons. Grandma and I were eating lunch. "There's a button missing from your sweater," said Grandma. "Do you know where it is?" "No, Grandma," I said. "I must have lost it on the playground or someplace." "Go fetch me the button basket," said Grandma. "Maybe I can match it." I ran to get the basket. Together, we looked through the buttons for one that would fit my sweater. Grandma found it, and while she sewed it on, I stirred the buttons around with my finger. I had looked at them all so many times, but I never tired of playing with them or hearing stories about them. "I think these little pearl buttons are nice, Grandma," I said. I had picked out 8 of them and laid them in a row on the table. "How many are there?" "There used to be 15 of them," said Grandma. "I don't know whether they are all there or not." "What had that many buttons on it?" I asked. "My new dress for the school program," Grandma laughed, "and Ma wished she had never put them on it before that evening was over." "Why, Grandma?" I asked. "Tell me what happened." "It's time for you to get back to school," Grandma said. "Leave the buttons here and I'll tell you about it this afternoon." When school was out, I hurried home to hear the story. Grandma was taking bread out of the oven, and she cut a crust for me to eat. "The dress was pretty blue," Grandma began. "Ma had made it especially for the end-of-the-year program at school. Everyone in the school had a piece to say or a song to sing. The families all came to the school in the evening, and after the program there was ice cream and cake for everyone. It was one of the biggest events of the year. I had been saying my piece over so many times that Pa teased me about it. "If you decide you don't want to go to the program, I can say your piece for you," he said. "Maybe you could say my piece," I said. "But you couldn't wear my new dress, and that's the most important part." "Now, Mabel," said Ma, "you shouldn't be so proud. No one is going to pay near as much attention to your dress as they will to how well you speak." Poor Ma didn't know how wrong she was that time. The dress had a nice big pocket on the skirt and 15 buttons that fastened down the back. Ma had crocheted little loops to fasten them. I thought they looked especially pretty, but I didn't say any more about the dress. When the evening of the program arrived, everyone was in a hurry to get ready. It seemed that everything happened to slow us down. It was about time to leave, and Ma had not changed her clothes yet. I had finished dressing, all but fastening the buttons on my dress, which I couldn't do. When I went to Ma to be buttoned, she said, "Ask Pa to do it, Mabel. I've got to get dressed too." But Pa had another trip to the barn before we left. "Get one of your brothers to help you," he said. "I couldn't fasten those little buttons anyway." I knew better than to ask Reuben or Roy to button my dress. I'd just have to wait for Ma. But Ma took so long getting ready that I heard Pa bringing Nellie and the buggy around. There was nothing to do but help myself. I certainly didn't want them to go off and leave me. I quickly took off the dress, turned it around, and fastened the buttons up the front. Pa was calling for us to hurry, so I slipped into my coat and ran to the buggy. We arrived at the school on time, and I hurried to join my friends in the front row. The school was crowded and didn't look at all like the place we had come every day to work. It was soon time for the program to begin. The younger children were the first to recite, so I was near the beginning. I could hardly wait for my turn to come. Finally, my name was called. I took off my coat and marched proudly to the front. Behind me I heard giggles and whispers. I turned around to see what could be the matter. The older people were trying not to smile, but the children were laughing openly, and they were laughing at me. I looked around to see what I had done. I could see nothing funny. I looked at Ma, but she had her head down. Pa was shaking with laughter. Then I heard one of the girls in the front. "Look at that," she said. "Mabel has her dress on backwards." I looked down at the neat row of buttons. I didn't think that looked so bad. Then I remembered. That big pocket was on the back. No one but boys had pockets on the back of their clothes. The evening was ruined for me. I mumbled my piece and sat down again, red-faced and humiliated. I don't remember hearing much of the program. Even when the teacher assured me I had done just fine, my spirits didn't lift much. The ice cream and cake weren't nearly as good as they should have been, and it was awfully warm in this school with a coat on, but I wouldn't take it off no matter how warm I got. To my relief, Pa was ready to leave early. I was more than glad to climb into the buggy and start for home. Of course, Roy had to say something about my disgrace. "That's just like a girl," he said. "She would have to do something silly so people would notice her." But Ma was sympathetic. "Now don't tease your sister," she said. "She didn't do it on purpose. We were all just too busy to help her, that's all. It's too bad I didn't notice before we left." Pa chuckled. "But she did look like she had her head screwed on backwards when she walked up there," he said. "Now, Pa, you're as bad as the boys," Ma scolded. "Mabel feels bad enough already. Don't make her feel worse." Of course, I got over it all right. But that dress was never quite the same again. Though no one mentioned it, I was sure they all remembered how funny I had looked whenever I wore the dress to church. Ma didn't make a dress with so many buttons on the back again, and she was careful to check on me before we left the house to go somewhere. Grandma laughed at the memory. "It seems funny now," she said, "but it was far from funny then. I guess it was just what I needed to take me down a peg." End of chapter 10.